News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin with the latest on efforts to end the war in Ukraine. U.S. and Ukrainian negotiators say they had productive discussions about a framework for a peace deal, but there was no final breakthrough. The two sides discussed potential parameters for a ceasefire as they pored over a 19-point proposal that emerged in Geneva last week. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with reporters in Florida.
So this is not just about ending a war. This is about ending a war in a way that creates a mechanism and a way forward that will allow them to be independent and sovereign, never have another war again, and create tremendous prosperity for its people. Not just rebuild the country, but to enter an era of extraordinary economic progress. It's a country, Ukraine has tremendous economic potential. Ukraine has tremendous opportunity for true prosperity.
That was Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Bloomberg Chief Europe correspondent Oliver Crook has more on the push for peace in Ukraine.
The key concerns for the Ukrainians, the thing that they will be sort of encouraged by is that it's actually Marco Rubio that's sitting at the other side of the table, who has a much more traditionalist view of geopolitics, much more ideological, much more principled, particularly when it comes to the Russian threat. The bad news for the Ukrainians is, of course, their delegation head on Friday resigned, Andrei Yermak, the number 2 in Ukraine, after he was sort of ensnared in these investigations into corruption. And we should say that nothing has been leveled against him yet, but his office and his home were both searched, so he resigned on Friday to Zelensky.
Bloomberg's Oliver Crook says the next steps will be decided in follow-up meetings depending on the outcome of U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff's talks in Moscow. The TASS news agency in Russia says Witkoff will meet tomorrow with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Well, Nathan, a software glitch that had threatened to disrupt a big portion of the global aviation system is close to being resolved. Airbus says the vast majority of its A320 planes have received the necessary update to their ELAC 2 computers. The plane maker says fewer than 100 planes still need the fix before they can return to service. Bloomberg's Benedict Camel reports this recall could have been a lot worse.
There has been some disruption, but not on the scale that we first feared when the statement came out on Friday, and we heard that about 6,000 aircraft are impacted. You have to remember this is the most widely flown plane on the planet. Millions of people rely on it every day. So if you hear that more than half the active fleet of those planes is impacted, we were wondering whether this would really cause sort of global mayhem. That has not happened.
Bloomberg's Benedict Camel reports most of the planes simply needed to return to an earlier version of that software that helps maintain their flight controls. Airbus says only a small number of planes require more complex attention, and checking shares of Airbus, they are down about 8%.
Now, Karen, let's turn to the latest on the investigation into the National Guard shooting in Washington, D.C. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says authorities think the Afghan suspect, 29-year-old Rahmanullah Lakhanwal, was radicalized in this country.
We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members, talk to them. So far, we've had some participation.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem appeared on NBC's Meet the Press, heard every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio. Lakhanwal is facing a first-degree murder charge in the death of 20-year-old West Virginia Guard member Sarah Beckstrom. He was granted asylum earlier this year after leaving Afghanistan in 2021. Now President Trump is promising to pause all asylum decisions for a long time.
We don't want those people. Does that make sense? You know why we don't want them? Because many have been no good, and they shouldn't be in our country.
President Trump spoke to reporters aboard Air Force One. Secretary Noem is suggesting asylum decisions could resume once a backlog of 1.5 million pending cases is cleared.
Well, Nathan, President Trump says he has decided on his pick for the next Federal Reserve chair. The president spoke to reporters on Air Force One.
Fed chair, are you any closer on that right now?
I know who I'm going to pick. Yeah.
Ooh, tell us. Kevin Hassett.
I'm not telling you.
Sources say Trump's chief economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, is seen as the likely choice to succeed current Fed chief Jay Powell. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.